Okay, no problem. Especially Hyde and Mia. And also, I beg your pardon for my broken English. I hope you can understand me. 2 days ago, I was just walking around the city, around the river, strolling along the river, when I was shocked to see that there was a man in the water in the cold weather. I was about to jump and try to save him. It just occurred to me that I used to work in environmental economics with fresh water. And I said, well, this guy may be a suicide man. And I looked at his face and he was smiling. He was happy, right? I couldn't understand that. And he went down very fast to a place where two other people were waiting for him from the fire department. It was a fireman and a firewoman, and he was in the river with a coat suit, dry suit actually, just trying to pick out or pick up a couple of pieces of plastics and stuff that were found in the river. It was a so-called spring cleanup. I was so shocked because I have never seen anything similar in my whole life. And I said, well, now I understand why fresh water has to do with recycling, right? Because if you do recycle, you don't have, plastic things floating on the rivers, as we now find all over the world, including my country. I titled that Waste Pickers Cooperative in Brazil, Social Inclusion while Recycling. It's true that since immemorial time, people just collect empty bottles in the streets, right, to sell them. I remember as a child, it was a common sight also for newspapers and old magazines and things like that. But ever since the so-called plastic revolution in the 50s and the 60s, lots of plastic stuff is left in our homes, right? And people just throw them away as waste, right? Actually, it's a long way to waste pickers stop being called scavengers. They hate that name, right? They say, no, we're not a scavenging for anything. And they say, it's waste, only if you don't recycle it. In Brazil, they say they call themselves catadores, that means pickers of recyclable materials and not waste. If it becomes waste, you should never recycle it. So, in this sense, I'm about to discuss the way cooperatives in Brazil, waste pickers cooperatives in Brazil, are functioning as a collective strategy for social inclusion, right? So, I hope the time I have is enough to cover the main points. And again, I beg your pardon for the pictures. It's not the penultimate photo technology from Canon or Nikon. It's just, the penultimate technology from cell phone cams, right? So the situation one is when you have groups of waste pickers with very low level organization. Normally they are just collecting in streets and in garbage dumps. They have no equipment whatsoever. They collect it, literally with their hands, right? And they normally are subordinated to the middleman. There is somebody who is going to buy on a daily basis. They have to sell on a daily basis so that they get money to eat. Okay? If they don't sell, they don't eat. They have absolutely no leverage against the middleman, and they're kept in this unsanitary situation. Okay. However, there is a problem. Right now, it was bad, right? It is bad. It is terrible. It's becoming worse. Why? Because they're closing the big dumping site, the big garbage dumpings, and transforming them into so-called controlled landfills. And they are forbidden to get in there. and the recyclable materials that were in the dumpings are now being beautifully filled with land, and they are forbidden to get it. They are literally bearing money. They are taking the material away. It's an important situation right now because not all the materials that should be processed are available, and they are tending to get, even less available to this first level of organization, which is a very low and very poor one. All right. To describe the second level of organization, so-called low level of organization, situation 2, there is some organization. They're trying to create cooperatives or associations. They got, some minimum equipment. You can see their carts, right? It's a makeshift carts in most of the cases, and they work, under underpasses. Can you see them? In the city they build these underpasses, beautiful underpasses, so they get in below them in order to collect and separate their daily pick. And also in some vacant lands, the pictures in the right show that. I have a beautiful pen that doesn't work, so yeah. All right. Sometimes it does. Okay, this is vacant land. Here you can have another overpass. Okay, I'll forget it. Doesn't work. Anybody wants to lend me a functioning light, I will accept it. All right. The third, but they still are submitted to the middleman and to the deposit owners. Deposit owners is a second level of middlemen along the chain of commercialization, of trade of recyclable materials, right? The deposit man buys from the middleman, right? And they are able to supply the recycling industry with volume. Okay? So they are not able to produce any sizable volume to be able to sell directly to the industry. Now, the situation 3, it's a medium level of organization. The groups are already organizing cooperatives. They own most of the equipment. They already have, their structure, sometimes it's a very good structure, sometimes it's a makeshift structure. Some of them already got some, second-hand trucks where they can carry most of the materials around, but they have the 2 main pieces that are needed for the trade, right? A balance and a press. They have to have a power press in order to press the materials. And separate materials, because we talked about plastic, but there are perhaps some 55 different types of plastic that go in different directions. Different industries will recycle different types of plastic materials, right? And they already have in their cooperatives literacy classes, because most of the pickers were originally illiterate, and they already have learned how to pack up in a way that the industry will accept the materials, okay? And finally, the situation 4, where we already find some high level of organization, bigger and more efficient cooperatives with equipment, with warehouses and motor carts. You can see the motor carts down. It's a national technology right now. One of the cooperatives is just, producing it and distributing all over the country. And some of them are already, the picture in the bottom left, already able to get into the so-called pre-industrial level of production. In other words, they collect some empty bottles, plastic bottles. They are able to wash them and to melt them and to make pallets. Sometimes they sell the pellets directly to the industry. Sometimes they get the pellets and make the bottles themselves. Okay? So some of them are recycling in situ, in the very warehouse where they are. So those are leading waste pickers associations and cooperatives, which are able to be a source of effective diffusion of knowledge. There is a question that Heidi asks, how far is the ONG, NGO role, how important is the NGO role for this kind of organization? I would say, well, at first stage for situation 1 and 2, and maybe even 3, I have no doubt that it's needed some kind of technical training and following up as necessary. However, once the cooperative reaches this stage, they themselves are able to do the so-called nurturing of other cooperatives, if they are really to cooperate and not to compete among themselves. Okay, so this is a situation where some of the cooperatives in Brazil are dealing right now. Here I have a table which we were able. This is only primary data. So it was the result of a research that lasted like a year and a half. It's about 331 different cooperatives in Brazil, all over the country, and then you can see how the situations were found. Some people might be surprised that you have less situation 1 than situation 2. It's just because it's very hard to get to some garbage dumpings. Some municipalities simply won't allow us to go there. They don't allow the pickers, or in some cases they don't allow researchers to get in. So, but this certainly won't really bias the whole situation, because you can see that most Brazilians, pickers, still remain in an assisted state, right? However, during the research, some myths, we could break some myths. We believed that at first that bigger cooperatives would be more efficient than smaller ones, and that was not true. You could find smaller cooperatives very efficient and bigger cooperatives which were not efficient at all. We thought that cooperatives from the main centers like São Paulo, Rio, Salvador, and big cities could be more efficient than the ones in the countryside, and this was also not true. You can find efficient cooperatives distributed in different places of the country, and the question between being on a capital city or in the countryside was not very important anyway. Actually, some people might think that those situations I showed before were like types, like a sociologist typology. It looks like, and if it's good for you, you just can think of it as being types. However, this was the result of a so-called discriminant analysis of multivariate statistics with 2 core variables, the so-called physical efficiency and economic efficiency, and you cross that out. And the groups were very clearly, it was very easy to find the discriminant and to see that later on we could just put the pictures together and say, hey, look, you find the types, you find the typology, and it's also, strongly determined in terms of statistical values. Besides, we can see that although the situation for cooperatives in Brazil are about 24, or were about 24 when the research was done, that was only about 7% of the total cooperatives. And the number of wage speakers, 1,381, was only like 4% of the number of pickers and the sample. It's estimated, nobody knows for sure, that in Brazil, waste pickers might number something between 800,000 and perhaps a million, dispersed all through the country. So we're still trying to figure and to have a better number once the country is too big, and so far the work is going on, right? Well, that was the creation of a national movement. Actually, most of this data was only possible to be gotten or to be obtained through a contact with the so-called MNCR, which is the national movement of waste pickers in my country. And this movement right now has in excess of 400 cooperatives connected to the movement, and they think that at least, till the end of this year, or perhaps up until 2014, they are able to affiliate about 1,000 cooperatives. So the movement is getting strength, is getting some new strength in my country, particularly because from 2008 on, there was decisive public investment in infrastructure for waste pickers cooperatives. That was the result of the original research in 2005 that resulted in a program and demand from the bottom up through several manifestations and demonstrations in the cities, and culminating with a march on the Palácio do Planalto, the government's seat, and a document. The document was delivered directly in the hand of Lula, then, the president. And Lula, to the surprise of most people, he embraced the cause, and he determined that from 2007 on, studies on the level of the Social and Economic Development Bank, BNDES, would be organized to get a very unique program to equip the cooperatives through a grant. It's not like lending money. It was money not from the budget, but money from the bank's profit. It's a public bank. Supposedly public banks were not supposed to have any profits, right? However, they do, right? And it was a good idea to avoid any kind of criticism by, subtracting money from the budget, the government's budget. So why not subtract from the public bank profit? And this is the way it works. So in the last 4 years, about $80 million were designated to infrastructure funding of about 130 cooperatives. There, still a drop, but however, it's a good beginning. And they're buying trucks, they're building infrastructure, they're buying machines. They do not give money, they give machines. They do not give money, they build the buildings, okay? So there is no money, effective money flow. Okay, now, of course, as a result, there is a social integration, particularly because the movement on a national scale want people not to have any bosses and the revenues are shared. So, see, how can you recycle? Well, first of all, you have to have industries that are willing to get, recyclable materials in order to recycle them. If you don't have the industries, you don't have the possibility to do. Once you do have those industries and you have the waste pickers doing their job, it's very fast to appear, some newly born entrepreneurs just to try to hire the pickers, as they wage earners, right? And the profits are accrued privately. So what the movement is trying to do, and the effort is to make that those cooperatives work on a system of accrued points. And the points are collected, as far as the amount of work that he or she, as a picker, does in that day. And the money is distributed every Friday on an assembly, which is also the moment of a democratic decision-making process, so that the plants are, mostly of them are being run in a self-management process. There is, it is important to say, no gender discrimination. However, in most cooperatives, if the husband works, the wife should not work in the same cooperative. And if the wife works, the husband should not work in the same cooperative. Which makes it a very interesting case why you can see in the photos about 60 to 70% of the waste pickers in Brazil are women, right? Because they normally are affiliated because they have kids that are enrolled at the school, and the husband will work in a different cooperative, and perhaps in the same city. If you argue with they themselves decided that. If you argue to them, why do they do that? They say, we don't want any husband-wife fights during job time. So, trading networks. What is that? The most effective ones can just lead a process of commercialization of the material picked up by less efficient cooperatives. Actually, the first trading network in Brazil was mounted originally in Salvador. However, the most efficient one is this one in São Paulo, which was put in place also with money from Avina. That's why Avina is mentioned in here. This way, they are able to collect a better amount of materials to sell directly to industries, just jumping over the middleman and the deposit owners. So that makes it for better prices. And it's interesting to note that the poor and less organized get better percentage value over the ones. Are you asking me to finish it? Oh, yes.
I had already asked you to finish, and I'm going to stand up, so that's the next step.
Can I still have 1 minute?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Right now, this is being built in Rio, okay? It's the biggest central, just putting together 73 cooperatives in Rio. They are organized this way over the Bahia, and I hope you can pardon me, and I thank you for your patience. Thank you.
I'm impressed. You really stuck.